This is the 11th video presentation for the CASE Natural Resource and Ecology course. As you view this video, be sure to make notes of important information. Feel free to pause, repeat, and resume the video whenever necessary. Predicting with Punnett Square, Lesson 6.2, Flourishing Fauna. You may have considered how animals adapt to their surroundings as you completed activity 6.2.2, Adaptive Avian. This presentation provides information about genetic inheritance and how to use genetics to predict characteristics of offspring. Some simple terms you will need to be familiar with. Genes are the simplest units of inheritance. They influence characteristics of all organisms. All of the genes of an organism are collectively called the genotype. Genes are contained within chromosomes in the sex cells, or gametes. Gametes undergo meiosis and mitosis to divide and package the genes to be passed on to offspring. Offspring inherit half their genes from one parent and the other half from the other parents. Genotype is the genetic makeup of an organism. Organisms with similar genotypes breed true and are referred to as purebred. When bred within the breed, the offspring also have similar characteristics. The phenotype, on the other hand, is the physical expression of the traits coded for by the genotype. Individuals with similar phenotypes may or may not have similar genotypes. When bred to individuals with similar phenotypes, the offspring may have wide variations in phenotypes. Heredity is influenced by genes contributed from both parents. Each organism has two genes for the same trait, one from each parent. If both genes are the same, the organism is said to be homozygous for that trait. If the genes codes for different expressions of the trait, the organism is called heterozygous. These terms will be illustrated in the following examples. If there are two different traits trying to be expressed, what are the mechanisms for the decision? Chance may be a logical assumption by students, but Mendel provides evidence of genetic dominance among gene pairs. Therefore, accurate predictions about traits are possible. When one gene overpowers another, it is said to be dominant. According to Mendel's law of dominance, a dominant trait will be expressed in the phenotype of the organism, and a recessive trait will be silenced. A silenced recessive gene is still present in the genotype and may be passed on to future offspring. If an offspring receives two recessive genes for the same trait, it will express the recessive trait rather than the dominant trait. Knowledge of the dominant and recessive traits may help in predicting offspring. Here are some rules to remember as Punnett Square is introduced. Use the law of dominance and the key provided here to predict the corresponding genotypes. The homozygous dominant genotype should be represented by two capital S's. The heterozygous genotype for solid coat color should have one capital S and one lowercase s. The recessive spotted coat color genotype should be two lowercase s's. To build foundation knowledge related to dominance, use a Punnett Square. One homozygous parent's genes are shown at the top as two capital S's. The other homozygous parent's genes are shown at left as two capital S's. Remember, each parent contributes one gene to the offspring. Pause the video while you fill in the practice Punnett Square shown. What percent of offspring would have homozygous dominant traits for solid coat color? What percent of the offspring would have a solid coat color? The predicted percentage of solid-colored offspring is 100%. If the crossing produced 100 new offspring, then all 100 would have the phenotype trait of solid coat color. This is a purebred mating. The individuals breed alike or true. This simple example will illustrate how recessive genes are still part of the genetic makeup, even though the parents do not show different phenotypic characteristics. In this example, the small s represents a spotted coat color. Pause the video while you fill in the practice Punnett Square shown. What percent of offspring would have homozygous dominant traits for solid coat color? What percent of offspring would have a spotted coat? The recessive gene emerges in 75% of the crosses. However, when paired with the dominant gene, it will not be expressed. The recessive gene will only be expressed in the homozygous recessive pairing, which will occur 25% of the time. Therefore, you can predict that 75% of the offspring will be solid in color and only 25% will express a spotted coat color. This is a hybrid mating in the example of a recessive gene can reemerge in the phenotype. To analyze the outcome, compare the genotypes, frequency, and phenotypes of offspring. To use statistical analysis, the probability can be calculated. Use the equation shown here to calculate probability. As a review, mark or highlight 3 key points in your notes that are important to remember from this presentation. List 2 ideas or concepts that relate to previous knowledge. List any questions you have about the topic. Discuss these questions with your instructor. Keep any notes you have from this presentation organized and available for use throughout the course. Through activity 6.2.3, population pressures, you will predict the probability of the occurrence of qualitative traits within an animal species using Punnett squares in order to understand how human pressure on wildlife can cause artificial selection within a population. Your teacher will share further instructions for this activity.